Assalamu alaikum, my dear students. Today, our topic is asexual reproduction in algae. First of all, what is asexual reproduction? Any reproduction event which does not involve fusion of gametes is simply known as asexual reproduction. In case of algae, asexual reproduction occurs by the formation of spores which are either naked without walls or newly walled. They have developed new wall layers. Okay, so याद रखना in algae asexual reproduction occurs by the formation of spores. The spores they germinate to form new plants. The spores, after their liberation from the sporangium, they germinate and result in the formation of new plants. The third important point about asexual reproduction is there is no alternation of generations. Alternation of generations means there is no haploid phase, gametophytic phase, there is no diploid phase or sporophytic phase. These phases, there is no alternation of gametophytic and haploid phase, sporophytic phases. Alternation of gametophytic and sporophytic phases, it is known as alternation of generations. But alternation of generations occurs only when there is sexual reproduction. Yaad rakhna, this is very much important. Now the different types of spores that we are going to talk about is the first one is zoospore. So we have different types of spores. We are going to talk about first about the zoospores. Zoospores are motile naked spores. They are provided with two, four, or many flagella. Zoospores, they are the motile, they are having flagella, they are naked spores, they do not possess any wall, and the number of flagella, it varies depending upon the species. It can be 2, for example in Ectococcus, it can be 4, for example Olothrix, or it can be many. Example is that of Odogonia. So depending upon the plant species, the number of flagella in a zoospore, it varies. One more important term associated with zoospores is synzoospores. Those zoospores which are multinucleate and at the same time they have multiple flagella, they have many flagella, they are known as synzoospores. Here you can see this possessing many nuclei inside and at the same time it has many flagella. And this type of spore has been found in case of Wucheria. The zoospores, they are formed inside the structures which are known as zoosporangia. Okay, so zoosporangium is the structure here. This is the zoosporangium inside which the zoospores are formed, and depending upon the species, the number of zoospores produced inside a zoosporangium, it varies. It can be 1, example is that of Odogonia, or it can be many, example is that of Cladophora. So the number of zoospores inside a zoosporangium, it varies. It can be 1 or many. Now the nature of zoospores which are formed, they can be either haploid or diploid depending upon the nature of the parent plant on which they are produced. If the parent plant is gametophytic, it is haploid. Obviously zoospore is going to be haploid. And if the parent plant is diploid or sporophytic, the zoospores produced on this plant, they are clearly going to be diploid. Now the second type of spores is Hypnospores. These are non-motile spores. Hypnospores simply means non-motile spores, and they are formed either singly or they may be formed inside a sporangium in many numbers. Okay, so the non-motile spores, they are known as Hypnospores and they are formed inside structures which are known as Hypnosporangia. And the number of Hypnospores produced inside the Hypnosporangium, it can be either 1 or it can be many depending upon the species. Okay, the Hypnospores, they are formed during unfavorable environmental conditions, especially in drought. So Hypnospores, they mark the arrival of unfavorable environmental conditions. You can simply remember, while zoospores are produced during favorable environmental conditions, the Aplonospores, they are produced during unfavorable environmental conditions. Example is that of Olothrix and Microspora. In these species, you will find they start producing Aplonospores during unfavorable environmental conditions. So Aplonospores are simply the non-motile spores, and they are produced either singly, or you can have many Aplonospores inside an Aplonosporangium. Now the Aplonospores, which are very much identical to the parent cell from which they are produced, they are known as Autospores. Here you can see these are the Autospores. They are very much identical to the parent cell in which they are produced. Example is that of Senidesmus and Chlorella. Those Aplonospores which have thickened walls and abundant food reserves, they are technically named as Hypnospores. Example is Pediastrum and Spherella. Here you can see these are the Aplonospores produced inside Aplonosporangium. All these Aplonospores, they are having thickened walls and they have abundant food reserves. That's why they are known as Hypnospores. So Aplonospores which are having abundant reserves of food and they are also thick walled, they are known as Hypnospores. This is very much important. You may be asked what are Hypnospores. Now another type of spores found in algae are known as Corpospores. Now what are Corpospores? These are diploid spores which are formed inside special structures which are known as Corposporangia. This is a Corposporangium, and inside this Corposporangium are produced diploid spores named as Corpospores. Okay, so Corpospores are exclusively formed in some red algae. These are the diploid spores. Okay, so obviously the plant body on which these spores are produced, they are diploid. That's why the spores are diploid. Okay, so diploid spores produced inside special structures known as Corposporangia, they are known as Corpospores. याद रखना, Corpospores are formed exclusively in some red algae. Now another category of spores produced in algae includes Tetraspores. These are special type of haploid Aplonospores. Okay, they are Aplonospores, non-motile spores, and these special type of haploid Aplonospores are named as Tetraspores, and these are formed inside a structure named as Tetrasporium. याद रखना. So the name Tetraspores, it itself indicates that 4 spores are produced inside a sporangium. That is why it is known as Tetrasporangium. Special type of haploid Aplonospores which are formed inside special structures named as Tetrasporangia, these spores are named as Tetraspores. Tetraspores are formed in diploid plants of some algal species. Example is that of Polysiphonia. So the Polysiphonia plant body is diploid. Okay, it produces Tetrasporangia, and inside these Tetrasporangia, Tetraspores are formed. Now how do these Tetraspores form? कैसे बन जाते हैं Tetraspores? The Tetraspores are formed by meiosis of Tetrasporangium nucleus. जो Tetrasporangium nucleus है, for example, this is the Tetrasporangium. The nucleus of this cell, it divides by meiosis. So obviously the 4 Tetraspores that will form as a result of meiosis, they are going to be haploid. याद रखना, they are going to be haploid. Now these Tetraspores which are formed inside Tetrasporangium, after their liberation from the Tetrasporangium, they germinate and form the male and female gametophytes which are haploid. I will repeat this one. Tetraspores are special type of haploid Aplonospores which are formed inside Tetrasporangia. These are found in case of some diploid plants like Polysiphonia. The Tetraspores, they are formed by meiosis of Tetrasporangium nucleus. That means the nucleus of Tetrasporangium, it undergoes meiosis and results in the formation of haploid spores. Okay, And these haploid tetraspores, they germinate to form the male and female gametophytes. Now, one more category of spores is exospores. Exospores are regularly cut off. These are the spores which are regularly cut off at the exposed distal end of the protoplast in basipetal succession. Here you can see these are repeatedly cut off at the distal end of the protoplast of the plant body in basipetal succession. Basipetal succession means the new ones are cut here and the old ones are at the top. The old spores are at the top and the new ones are at the base. Okay, this is what basipetal succession means. These are the spores which are regularly cut off at the exposed distal end of the protoplast in a basipetal succession. These spores, they aggregate in groups and develop colonies. Example is that of Chamaesyphon. In Chamaesyphon, the exospores, they aggregate, they form groups, or you can say they form colonies. Okay, example is Chamaesyphon. Now the last type of spores formed in algae, they are known as endospores. These are small spores which are formed by divisions of the mother protoplast. Here you can see this is the cell. Okay, it is protoplast divides and it results in the formation of many spores inside. And these spores which are formed as a result of divisions in the protoplast, divisions of the protoplast of the mother cell, they are known as endospores. Okay, so the small spores, very small spores which are formed by divisions of the mother cell protoplast, they are known as endospores. And these endospores, they germinate directly and develop into a new plant. Example is Dermocarpa. So the endospores are basically the small spores which are produced as a consequence of divisions of the mother protoplast, and these germinate, okay, without any resting period. They germinate directly and develop into new plants. Example is Dermocarpa. So these are the different types of spores which are produced in algae. In the next part, we are going to talk about the sexual reproduction in algae. Till then, stay blessed.